Hello, and welcome. It's probably going to be the first of many screencasts and times we spend together virtually, so welcome. At this point, I am sure that you have read the assignment on PowerSchool. You've reviewed your notes from the first chapter and remembered the historical context in which Ivanhoe occurs. And you have previewed the second lesson. And I'll remind you what that is. Now we're looking specifically at Ivanhoe's personal history, and not only his personal history, but how it is affected by or connects what is happening historically. So we know that one of the main things that is happening historically at this time is the conflict between the Normans and the Saxons. And we want to look at how Ivanhoe's life reflects that conflict. And we also know that King Richard the Lionhearted, went on a crusade. He's a Norman king, and Ivanhoe went with him. And now Ivanhoe has come back in disguise. I don't know if you figured that out at the end of chapter 1, but the Palmer is Ivanhoe. Okay? So you've previewed that, and you know that you're watching for clues about Ivanhoe's backstory, his life. Okay, so I'm probably going to read chapter 2 in 2 sections, just for technical reasons. Your job is to be thinking about what we learned about Ivanhoe's life, to take notes, and I know some of you have already read chapter 2 before listening. Some of you are going to read chapter 2 after listening. I don't think it's practical to do the 2 at the same time, given the fact that your chapter is on its side, which I can't fix, and I'm not going to try at this point. And then you're going to make notes, open notes about his life. Later today, I will put up my notes, but I really want you to make your notes first and then check with my notes. And this just needs to be done by Friday. So you're in good shape. Take your time. And here we go. Chapter 2, Visitors to Rotherwood. When Ivanhoe led the Normans out of the woods, he pointed ahead to a cluster of low stone buildings surrounded by a moat and a tall stockade fence. "This is Rotherwood," he said, "home of Cedric the Saxon." Once the travelers identified themselves, the drawbridge was lowered and the Normans and their party entered the courtyard. A servant showed them into a huge hall where a long table in the shape of a T was set for the evening meal. Across the top, the table was raised on a carpeted dais a step above the long lower end. Cedric the Saxon sat in a large carved chair at the center of this dais table, with the Lady Rowena at his right. He was anxious to start his evening meal when a servant appeared at the door and announced, "My lord, the good knights Briand de Bois-Guilbert and Maurice de Bracy, with their squires and guards, request your hospitality and lodging for the night." "Normans," Cedric muttered to Rowena in disgust. "Even though Bois-Guilbert has proven himself a brave and fearless knight in the Holy Land, and he is a Knight Templar who has taken all the vows of chivalry, plus those that prohibit him from marrying, I know him to be a cruel and arrogant man. And as for de Bracy, why, he's only a puppet for doing Prince John's bidding. Still, it's only for one night, and I cannot deny hospitality to anyone, Saxon or Norman." Then, aloud, he replied to his servant, "Invite them to enter and join in at dinner. They are welcome here at Rotherwood." The 2 knights entered the hall and approached the dais, while their attendants in the Palmer seated themselves at the foot of the long lower table with the servants. Cedric rose to greet his guests, and, with a wave of his hand, motioned them to the 2 carved dais seats at his left. As he took his seat, Maurice de Bracy was so captivated by the beautiful Princess Rowena that he couldn't tear his eyes away from her face. But Rowena didn't care for such admiring looks from a Norman, and she glared at de Bracy until he lowered his eyes. Cedric caught these looks and reminded de Bracy, "Sir Knight, a Saxon princess does not welcome the attention of Norman knights and Templars whose ancestors took away her lands and murdered her son." Bois Guilbert angrily interrupted his host. "We have been fighting and dying in the Holy Land in England's name. Surely we can pay a compliment to an English lady." De Bracy tried to soften the Templar's angry words. "Sir Cedric, I meant no offense to Lady Rowena, and I ask her pardon for staring at her, but never have I seen such beauty anywhere. May I apologize by offering to escort you both along these dangerous roads to the tournament at Ashby?" "Ha! I need no escort to travel my own land," snapped Cedric indignantly. "And I don't know if you are... And I don't know if we're even going to the tournament. To me, it's nothing more than a Norman game of showing off and practicing for war." "I accept your policy, Sir Knight," Rowena told de Bracy, "but rather than give me compliments, give me news of the war in the Holy Land." What she wanted to hear most was news of Ivanhoe. But she couldn't come right out and ask for such news, because no one at Rotherwood was allowed to say his name. But before either knight could give Rowena any news, a servant entered the hall to announce that a stranger was at the gate, begging for hospitality for the night. "Bring him in, whoever he is," ordered Cedric. "With this storm raging, no one deserves to spend the night outdoors." A few minutes later, a tall, thin, old man appeared at the door of the hall. "I am Isaac of York," he stated, bowing to Cedric, removing his high, square cap. The master of Rotherwood invited Isaac to join them at dinner by waving him to a place at the lower end of the table. But none of the servants or guests made room for the old man, because he was a Jew. Only the palmer rose from his place. "Sit here by the fire, old man," he said. "My clothes have dried, and I have eaten. Yours are still soaked, and you need food as well." With that, the palmer walked towards the dais. Bois Guilbert was busy praising the superior fighting abilities of his Templars when Rowena interrupted him. "But your knights weren't able to win back the holy city of Jerusalem, were they?" she taunted them. "And the Templars weren't alone, were they? Weren't King Richard's gallant knights with him as well?" "They were only second best," sneered the Templar scornlessly. "They were second to none," mocked a voice nearby. Everyone turned to where the palmer was standing, his face still hidden in the hood of his cloak. "I repeat, Richard's men were second to none. Think back, Bois Guilbert, to a tournament held at Acre during a break in the war. King Richard and 5 of his Saxon knights competed against 6 of your Norman knights, including de Bracy and yourself. Do you remember how that turned out?" While de Bracy hung his head in embarrassment, Bois Guilbert scowled with rage. He reached for his sword, then realized that this was not the place to start a fight. Cedric, however, was delighted to learn of a Saxon victory, and he said, "Tell me, good palmer, who were these noble Saxon knights?" "Gladly, my lord." And the palmer named 5 of the combatants. Yes, and who was the 6th?" shouted Cedric eagerly. "A young knight whose name is not well known. I don't remember his name." I doubt your memory has suddenly... excuse me, wrong voice. I doubt your memory has suddenly failed you, Sir Palmer, said the Templar. I'll tell you who the knight was, Lord Cedric, for in spite of his youth, he was renowned for his ability in battle, and he defeated me only because my own horse fell. If he were in England at this moment, in fact, at the tournament at Ashby this week, I'd gladly challenge Ivanhoe to combat again. Cedric gasped, but did not utter a word. Yes, I do recall now, said the Palmer softly. His name was Ivanhoe. The young knight was wounded in battle and stayed behind at Canvalès when Richard left. But then he fell into the hands of some of your Norman friends, Sir Templar, and they didn't treat him too well. I imagine he's recovered by now and on his way home. When he arrives, I'm certain he'll accept your challenge. And if he refuses, warned Bois Guilbert, I'll proclaim him a coward throughout all Europe. That will not be necessary, shouted Rowena, jumping up angrily. I've known Ivanhoe since we were children, and I add my own guarantee to that of this holy Palmer. If Ivanhoe hadn't been wounded and were here now, he'd be the first to defend the honor of Saxon England at Ashby. Cedric now broke his silence. Sir Templar, if you need further assurance of the honor of a true Saxon, I give you mine. The honor of Cedric stands behind the honor of his son, Ivanhoe. Okay, so your task now, after having listened and read, is think of what we know about Ivanhoe's personal life. Well, we learned a lot about Ivanhoe's personal life here. So focus on that and take notes. And I've got my notes ready, but I'm going to wait till a little bit later in the day to post them. Do take your own before you check your notes. And then notice I put up a couple very optional items on the resource page. I found a clip for the movie, which is a great movie, and the trailer's there. There's also a link to a television show from the 50s, which I remind you is before I was born. So it is old. I watched a bit of it. It looks fun. I'm not sure how historically accurate it is, but it looks fun. It's got a great theme song, which I expect some of you will learn. And then a link to an animated Australian version of Ivanhoe. Now, again, this one I haven't watched in full, so it may or may not hold to the historical facts, or rather the written version of Ivanhoe. So I bid you farewell, good nights and ladies, and we'll meet again on Friday. I hope you're all doing very well.